Well, imagine you're the play-by-play announcer for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and you get to call this play.
Daniel Lincoln from 45 yards out to win it for the Volunteers. The snap, the spot. The kick is blocked! It is blocked by Alabama! It is blocked by Alabama! The Crimson Tide wins! The Crimson Tide wins!
Or how about this one?
Drake makes the grab at the 5. Up the near side, 20, cuts left, 25, goes outside the contain. He's to the 30, turns on the accelerator. Here comes Hugo. He can't get him. Drake down the left sideline. He's to the 20, to the 15, to the 10, lunges in. Touchdown, Alabama! Kenyon Drake!
And then comes that moment when it's 2nd and 26.
Here's Tua stepping back, loads up, looks long, throws, end zone.
Touchdown!
Alabama! Devontae Smith! Touchdown, Alabama! And the Crimson Tide has once again ascended to the top of the college football mountain. Their 5th national championship in 9 years, their 17th overall.
So to ask Eli Gold what his all-time favorite play is impossible to answer. He's called some great ones and has been the voice of the Crimson Tide for 3 decades. We hope you enjoy our conversation with my friend, Eli Gold.
Drake makes the grab at the 5. Up the near side, 20, cuts left, 25, goes outside the contain.
Daniel Lincoln from 45 yards out to win it for the Volunteers. The snap, the spot.
He's to the 30, turns on the accelerator. Here comes Hugo. He can't get him. Drake Tua stepping back, loads up, looks long. Drake down the left sideline. He's to the 20, to the 15, to the 10, lunges in. Touchdown, Alabama!
I've especially looked forward to interviewing Eli Gold because I've known him for about 30 years and I've become a fan of his on TV when I worked with him and on radio too. Eli, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, as always. We see each other occasionally in different places. How weird is life? What are the chances that a kid that grew up in Brooklyn would broadcast Alabama football games for 30 years?
Well, the odds were long, certainly, but no different than a guy who grew up in Bessemer, Alabama, broadcasting New York Yankees baseball for all that many years.
Mel Allen. Yeah.
Of course, went to the University of Alabama, was a voice of the Crimson Tide.
Absolutely.
And then he, along with his broadcast partner, Red Barber, who was from Columbus, Mississippi, 2 Southern boys who captivated the audience in the Bronx. So,
and New Yorkers loved them.
And loved them.
Absolutely.
So, including myself, I used to go to bed every night with that transistor radio in my ear. Those of you who are young and don't know what a transistor radio is, you can Google it.
Yeah, it doesn't plug in.
No, it doesn't plug in. But it was, I grew up listening to Mel, and we had talked about that many times before his passing, how interesting it's been, this flip-flop of careers.
The trick was not to fall asleep listening because you'd wake up with dead batteries, and my
Always.
mother would only give me a couple of double A's.
Every time I'd fall asleep. Next morning you'd wake up and the button was still in your ear and the radio was dead.
Yeah. Was Mel Allen's voice one that really captured you? Who else in the New York market? You had lots of choices.
I did. At that time, it was Marv Albert, who is still a spectacular broadcaster. I believe better on radio than he is on TV, and he's magnificent on television. Mm-hmm. But in those days, Marv did the radio for both the New York Rangers and the New York Knicks. His travel schedule was quite hectic, and virtually every night he was on WNBC, Radio 66 in New York, bringing you either the Rangers or the Knicks. So he was a voice that I grew up really admiring. There was another gentleman by the name of Bob Wolf, who may not be well known in these parts, but he was a staple of New York sports broadcasting for years, and he broadcast the Don Larson Perfect Game. He was on the air for that. So those gentlemen were the ones who I really was captivated by.
To a Indiana farm boy raised in a town of less than 1,000 people, when I hear I grew up in Brooklyn, I visualize black and white video playing stickball with a hydrant shooting water into the streets. Mm-hmm. Was your upbringing kind of like that in Brooklyn?
It was very much like that. But I also grew up listening to a guy from a small little town in Indiana, Bippus, Indiana, Chris Schenkel.
Oh, my goodness,
a
that's
great
right.
broadcaster then for ABC, came out of a small little town in Indiana, and I loved his work. But yes, New York City was as depicted. You know, nobody had a car. You rode the buses and the subways. We played stickball in the vacant lot, or you played box baseball, the boxes that made up the sidewalk. You'd learn how to put the spin on the little pink rubber ball, and you know, it was a normal upbringing for a kid in the city.
You don't have a lot of memories of your father raising you. You lost him way too early, way too young. Your mother raised you. How was that? How did your mom deal with feeding you and raising you and taking care of you?
Well, the feeding me part was, she obviously did well because
she was okay with that.
Yeah, but no, it's, you know, she was okay with it. She gave me a lot of freedom. She, you know, I was not much for school. I didn't spend a whole lot of time in school. I went to work. I worked at some of the best radio stations in New York City, not on the air, but behind the scenes.
But your foot was in the door.
My foot was in the door. I learned the business. WNEW, WOR in New York, the Mutual Broadcasting System, which in its day was the network. And then I would just, days were different, times were different. There was no cell phones, of course. I'd call my mom and I'd say, "Mom, I'm at the Rangers game." She goes, "Oh, okay, you're at the Garden, good." Well, no, I took a bus up to Montreal, and I'm here at the Montreal Forum. The Rangers are playing tonight, and I'll be back. I'll take a bus back to New York afterwards. And I was eaten up with sports, and I was eaten up with broadcasting. You know, I used to sell peanuts at Madison Square Garden because I couldn't afford to go. I didn't have that kind of money. But the best way to go was to go and get paid for being there. And I would stand up in the upper deck. And I had a theory there was a method to my madness. I was too young to sell beer. I was still in my early teens. I wasn't of legal age. I couldn't sell beer. That big metal thing with the hot dogs, you know, the boiling water and the hot dogs and the buns and all. Well, schlepping that thing around was too much like work. I didn't want to do that. So I said, I'll sell peanuts. Peanuts, everybody likes peanuts. And you'd carry it around in a laundry basket, like, you know, 50 bags of peanuts. And they'd sell themselves, but I would work in the upper deck, in the cheap seats, closest to the press box.
Oh.
That was my reason. I wanted to watch the game, but I wanted to be there when those broadcasters came out of the booth to go to the men's room, out of the elevator to go, and I would pester them with questions. And then, you know, I'd sell the occasional bag of peanuts to keep the bosses happy. But I would just stand there and I would stare over to the radio booth like a real geek. And I couldn't hear these men. I mean, I was far enough away I couldn't hear them, and there was crowd noise. But I would watch them talk. And I'd watch a producer hand them a card with a piece of commercial copy. I just wanted to be there, man. I wanted to be that guy. And then when the game was over, they'd come walking out to go back to the elevator, and I'd run right up to them, home team guys, visiting team guys, and just pester them with questions.
It didn't discourage you if they blew you off and said, "Kid, I don't have time for you," but
no.
I'm guessing most of them would at least engage you a little.
They would engage you in conversation, and you know, some were, again, more friendly than others, but no, I would ask them stuff. Some of it I'm sure was quite elementary and silly. Some of it was very much business related, but they were nice.
So on game day, when you've got to get upstairs to the broadcast booth and you're busy and a little kid runs up to you and go, "Mr. Gold, I listen to you all the time. Can I talk to you, or would you have a picture taken?" I'll bet you'd never blow a kid off.
I never do. I never fail. Plus the fact, when people, you know, what folks don't understand is I work for the listeners. I work for the fans. No, their signature may not be on the bottom of my paycheck, but I work for those guys, for the listener. Without them, I've got nothing. And if they stop coming up to you,
that's when you're in trouble. Exactly.
That's when you got an issue. So if somebody is comfortable enough to come up to me, want a picture, want a handshake, want a question answered, I will never refuse them that time.
People have asked me over the years if I ever get tired of being recognized. Absolutely not. If
No.
I ever got tired of that, I'd be in trouble.
Exactly.
We're going to take our first break. We're visiting with Eli Gold today, a good friend, a great broadcaster, and we'll get around to talking about Alabama football a little later as well. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. We're visiting with my friend Eli Gold, who has been a broadcaster almost all of his life and has done Alabama football for 3 decades. Eli, we appreciate your time today and talking with us. Rather than ask you, so tell me, what all have you done in broadcasting? It would be easier to go, what haven't you done? Have you ever called a horse race?
I have. I've called horse
I thought
racing.
maybe that would be the one.
No, I have called horse racing for the old Mutual Broadcasting System. The only major sport I have not done is golf. A, I've not been asked.
A good reason.
And B, I believe that you should be, particularly in golf, with the nuances of what every club does and this, that, you should be a golfer. And I am not a golfer. What I do on the golf course should not be seen by human eyes.
But at the same time, you're not a basketball player or a baseball player or a football player, but I know how you prepare. You are prepared for every single game. You never walk in cold. Would you say to a young broadcaster, that's the key?
That is the key.
Know what you're talking about.
No broadcast is difficult if you've done your homework.
Absolutely.
Assuming you have the ability that got you hired in the first place. Assuming you have the ability, no broadcast is tough if you've done your homework. But for a standard 3-hour broadcast, you're going to do hours and hours and hours of preparation, and I'll have notes and biographical info and statistical information in front of me for a Bama game. I might use 10% of what I've got. But when that game is stopped because of lightning,
or power outage,
or a power outage, as we had happen in hockey in the past and what have you, you're comfortable. You can sit back and relax and say, all right, I'm going to have to fill here for 2 hours, but I got a ton of stuff to talk about. And it just puts your mind at ease.
Kurt Gowdy told Al Michaels, don't ever become jaded. He talks about it a lot in his book. That's pretty good advice for any broadcaster, news, sports, I suppose weather too. Have you tried to never just think it's just a game, because to the fans it ain't just a game?
No, I realize quite how serious it is. And there's a big responsibility to the university as well. You are a representative of the university, let alone the athletic department, but the university in general. So I take that. I always tell people, they say, what is it like being the voice of the Crimson Tide? And I'll always say it's like holding a rare piece of crystal in your hand. That's the way this job is. It's a rare piece of crystal. You're blessed to have it. God forbid you drop it. So that's how I approach it, very, very seriously. And no, I prepare. I'll prepare for the New Mexico State game the exact same way I would prepare for a national championship game, because it is the next broadcast and you're on the air and you're out there. And if you've screwed up, it doesn't matter who the opponent was. So, no, I work hard.
Those of us who haven't done much sports broadcasting, I've done a little bit of basketball and football, I would think the slower the sport, the more challenging a broadcast would be. Is that accurate?
It is. For me, of course, I enjoy it, but probably the most challenging, despite the fact that I have the speed of hockey, the speed of NASCAR, what have you, for me, the most challenging is baseball, because they have done studies in a standard 9-inning game. The ball is actually in play for 6 minutes. That counts the split second the pitcher throws it to the catcher. That counts the 2.3 seconds the ball flies to the left fielder. The ball is in play for 6 minutes out of a standard 3-hour game. Then you take out your commercials. So you're basically filling for 2.25 hours. You've got to have stories. You've got to know the game. You've got to be able to learn, as you do it for baseball, how a story that I tell you here in the span of 25 or 30 seconds, you learn how to spread that out over 3 outs. And it's a different science.
I want to talk about the coaches that have been coaches here at the university since you've been here, but talk a bit about the color guys that have been with you. You've had several. I think it's sometimes underappreciated, that job, how good they can be when they get comfortable with you.
Yeah, the key to a good analyst is obviously the knowledge. I started with Doug Layton, 10 years with him, 10 years with Kenny Stabler, 10 years with Phil Savage, and now 2 years with John Parker Wilson. The toughest thing is these guys, talking in particular about Snake and Phil and John Parker, no disrespect to Dougie Do, but just former players at a high level, they see the game up here.
Yeah.
They see it at a totally different level than you and I do. Then for them to be able to see that, to digest it, to spit it out so that us normal folks can understand it, and do it in 11 or 12 seconds before they break huddle and come to the line of scrimmage. And again, it's different on radio than TV. You know, on TV, the color man can go literally until the snap of the ball because you can see what's going on. On radio, though, you can't see. I've got to say who's wide right, who's wide left, what the formation is, you know, the shotgun or the pistol or whatever it might be, and who's where. So you've got about 11 or 12 seconds at best, to spit out your analysis. And that is very tough to do, but I've had great guys alongside of me who have been absolutely spectacular to work with.
And it's interesting, they're so different. Doug was Doug, and those of us who remember Doug and love Doug, he loved Alabama football.
Yeah.
He loved football, but he wasn't going to break down X's and O's a lot, but how entertaining he was.
He was entertaining, obviously.
So was Stabler.
Yeah, and Kenny, of course, looked at it as a quarterback, as a Super Bowl winning quarterback, which is, you know, another way. And then Phil Savage looked at it as a personnel man, as an NFL general manager, which he was back now with the Jets as an assistant to the general manager. And then John Parker, again, looking back at it now as a former player. So they all come at it with different backgrounds, but very entertaining, but most knowledgeable. And, you know, and I understand that. Why would people say, don't you feel bad you can't analyze stuff? I said, heck no. Why would I want to analyze something when I'm sitting next to a guy who won a Super Bowl? I mean, the next snap I take is going to be my first. And this guy's won a Super Bowl. So I know I call the play, then I hush up and let those boys do what they do best.
John Parker Wilson has really found himself with you, I think, now. Once in a while, I think he knows what's going to happen. When you're calling the play, he sees it and sees a weakness and kind of knows a touchdown's coming.
Snake did that too. He'd say, now Eli, here's a great time. We ought to do this. Remember back in the first quarter on a 3rd and 6, they did this play, this play, this play, and then son of a gun if they didn't run it again. And same thing with John Parker. It just took a little while, as it always has, in that first year for us to get our timing down and our chemistry down and our, you know, so you could work with each other without having to look at each other. And it took a few games to get that timing down, but we finally did.
As we take another break, let's say God rest the souls of Doug Layton and Kenny Stabler,
Amen.
Two guys that gave us a lot of enjoyment over the years. We'll take one more break. We're going to talk specifically about Alabama football coaches that Eli has worked with and more about Bama football as we continue. We continue our conversation with Eli Gold, the voice of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Look him up sometime and look at all of the different sports he has broadcast. His experience is just amazing.
I've been blessed.
And you're good at all of it. Art Clarkson brought you down to do hockey in what year?
Actually, it wasn't Art Clarkson.
Oh, it wasn't?
It was John Bassett.
Do I have the year right? 79?
77, but you're close.
I was wrong on both.
Yeah, but it's close. But no, I did come down when the old Birmingham Bulls and the World Hockey Association were here. That was the rival major league to the NHL. I then got together with Art Clarkson and started doing Barron's baseball.
Did that for about 4 years?
Yeah, 4 years there, and then then the Bama did sports talk.
Yep.
And then did all sorts of stuff.
Worked at Channel 6 with me
Worked
back
at
in
Channel 6.
I think we had color TV then, but it was close.
It was close.
It was
yeah.
close.
We did have rabbit ears. I
Yeah.
know that on the antennas.
Speaking of television, the best compliment you can give me is I watch you all the time, or the very best one is I liked that specific story you did. Then I know they really watched. That makes me feel so good. Is the best compliment, can you get a better compliment than Eli? We watched the game on CBS, but we turned down the volume and listened to you. Is there a better compliment
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I mean, it really is. But there's a relationship, and I'll explain to you, as I'm sure you understand. There's a relationship between the radio broadcaster and the fan that cannot be replicated by television.
I believe that.
On radio, we're there every game, home and away, good, bad, or indifferent. We're there middle of the week with the coaches show. We're there with the Daily Show. When you hear the voice, you think Alabama. As good as Brad Nessler is now and Vern Lundquist was, as good as Chris Fowler, as good as Brent Musburger, pick the broadcaster, but it's somebody different every week. It might be one guy 2 or 3 times a year, but you cannot replicate that romantic relationship.
That's true.
And I'll use that term correctly there. Radio is a romantic medium when you deal with the Vin Scullys of the world, with Dodger fans, the Ernie Harwells of the world, with Detroit Tiger fans, and so on. That can't be replicated with television.
That develops over years, but over decades, 3 decades. When Alabama football comes on, people expect, you don't have to look at the numbers on the dial, flip till you hear Eli's voice.
Yeah.
What a great relationship
It's
that is for you.
unbelievable. 31 years.
My sons know how to tweak the equipment next to the TV to make the play match you, because the timing is a little different. And when that's perfect, it really is a perfect broadcast.
Well, we
So much
appreciate
fun.
that. Thank you.
Talk about some of the coaches. I'm not going to ask who do you like best, who do you think was the best coach. That's everyone's got an opinion on that. But go through the coaches you've worked for and tell me what jumps in your mind about them.
I've been with every coach since Bill Curry, so that goes back a ways. And they're all different, yet they're all the same. Gene Stallings, his approach, his style, everything about him was different than Coach Saban. Yet they both aspired to and both won national championships. So there is no right way or wrong way. Coach Saban and I have a wonderful relationship, but it's very much a business relationship. When I need to talk with him about a question, he's there to answer it. Obviously on the air, when I'm sitting with him, I have his undivided attention. Do we sit around and shoot the breeze for hours on end? No.
Get on each other's boat?
No.
Hang out?
No. But he knows that talking to old Eli, as nice of a guy as I am, he knows that talking to old Eli is not going to help Alabama win football games. Now, conversely, Coach Stallings and I, we would sit around on a Friday night and talk for an hour and a half or 2 hours, then eventually turn the tape recorder on and record the pregame show. Coach Shula and I, the same way, we'd sit around and shoot the breeze. Coach Franchione was very open, a little more of an edge to him than some, but we had I've had a great relationship with all of the coaches who have been here. Coach Dubose, even Mike Price in the 1 month, we did some shows and all together. So the relationships have been wonderful, but obviously everybody's approach is different, but the prize is the same. You're all shooting for this piece of jewelry right here.
How many of those do you have now?
6 national championships and a whole bunch of SEC titles, plus a baseball and a hockey ring. So I've been blessed to hitch my wagon to the right franchises and teams over the years.
You made a good point about the right way to coach. If you win a national championship, that's the right way to coach that time.
Exactly. And Coach Stallings was everybody's grandfather. And of course, Coach Saban is a wonderful grandfather, a nice guy, but they're different people, different personalities, but both magnificently successful. So there is no right or wrong way to do it.
I said I wasn't going to ask you who was best, but the Saban era has just changed the record books.
Sure.
When he got off that plane out of Tuscaloosa Airport, everyone thought, this is a great hire. I guess all of us thought that.
Sure.
But we didn't know how great it was going to be.
No.
Lots of things falling in place at the right time under his leadership.
Yeah, I think we all knew the man was outstanding.
Sure.
Could I, and I can only speak for myself, could I have seen the immediate meteoric rise that was coming? I didn't expect that. But you just knew from the fact that he had won a national title at LSU, you knew the guy was very, very good. And you hope. And then son of a gun, 1 year you go to the Shreveport Bowl, and the next year you're, in the hunt for national championships and been there ever since.
Once you get to the stadium on game day, here or on the road, is the hard part the broadcast, or is the hard work, not the hard part, hard work the preparation?
The preparation is the hard stuff.
The broadcast is the broadcast.
I always have a saying that I've used many times. Said you have to get on the air to relax, because that's what you do. You know your job, you are prepared, and now it's the fun stuff, the game. Yeah, and it's a difficult broadcast, and of course people hang on every word, and if you make a mistake, you're going to hear about it. But I've said many times, man, I can't wait to get on the air so I can relax. But without that prep work, and it's a week long of preparation, without that prep work, you'll never be able to relax because you'll be unsure of yourself.
I'll make this my last question in our interview today, and I really have enjoyed it. Wish we had more time.
Sure.
I'm a year older than you. Had 43 years in television. You've had so many different opportunities in broadcasting. You got a great wife, a great daughter, a great job. Some might argue in the state, the best job you can have in the state.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit in the last seconds we have of just how blessed you feel about the hand you've been dealt.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And I thank God constantly. I mean, I don't know what anybody's religious beliefs, and that's not the point here, but I will talk to the Lord and thank Him constantly for the blessings that I've had, relatively good health, a wife. We've been married for 42 years now, and we've been together for 5 years before that. So 47 years we have been together. We've got a lovely daughter. But it took that. Claudette had to do so much of raising Elise, our daughter, because there were many years, Mike, and you know this, I was on the road for better than 200 days a year. Better than 200, up until just a few years ago. Up until about 4 years ago, I was doing 200 nights a year in the hotel. But I love it.
I know.
I love it. I thrive on that. Now it's nice to have been able to back away from some assignments and spend a good bit more time at home, put the boat in the lake, which I might add, my little pontoon boat pulls up alongside the USS Royer out there on the lake, and I feel like just like this big compared to the yacht. But
22 more payments and the USS Royer will be all mine.
I hear you. But no, I have been blessed, and we have a wonderful life, and I do have a great wife, a wonderful family, and honest to goodness, I talk and thank God all the time for the blessings that have been bestowed upon me.
Eli, thank you for your time today. Look forward to hearing you this season, next season, season after that. May we both have health, good health, long enough to do all the things we want to do.
Amen to that. And remember, there's a no-wake zone around my little pontoon boat, so don't go toppling.
No showing off. Okay. Just keep waving at me as you go by.
I'll do it.
Roll Tide, and thank you so much.
Thank you.